Welcome to A-Ball Corner Pocket with Double J. Welcome to episode 5, touring Brushy Mountain. I'm in my man cave video studio where I do a lot of my work. I took a break of Red's story so you could see inside where Red lived for so many years until 1982. I hadn't been inside Brushy since the late 70s when I was in high school. I have to say, it was an incredible experience to visit Brushy Mountain Prison again. Brushy was its own world, a society where only the strong survived. Many didn't. For so many, it was hell on earth, but for others, it was redemption. Red found redemption within the walls of Brushy Mountain. He found peace and eternal life, as we heard from the previous episodes. If you're in East Tennessee, I would encourage you to visit historic Brushy. It's an incredible place to see. They do tours in the prison, and they use former guards from Brushy Mountain. Ricky T and I decided to do a tour and try to get some footage from my own experience, and so you could see the place for yourself. I met Larry Wright, a former correctional officer for Brushy Mountain for several years. My first question was, did you know Red Fuller? And I think in the teaser you may have seen what he said, but you'll see exactly what he said in this podcast. Larry was a tour guide, and boy does he tell the story of Brushy Mountain Prison. He gave me his card, Grumpy's Cutting Boards. So I put a link to his Facebook page so you can check out his work. He does a great job with those cutting boards. Also, check out Brushy Mountain's website. You really need to check it out. It's pretty cool. So enjoy episode 5, Touring Brushy, on A-Ball Corner Pocket with Double J. Well, they're taking us to prison. Double J and Ricky T. Heading to Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary.
Shake and bake.
Shake and bake.
Shake and bake.
So right there on the left, that is where the football team came in there, and Red Fuller did his stuff because he was up there in the minimum security right up there. So I know when you pull up into this parking lot, you see this castle. It's incredible. And you get to walk into this place and you're thinking, what's going on in this crazy place that looks like it's something out of Russia or something, and there's a lot of crazy stuff here. You saw the general administration, that's the wardens. That's the house that the warden lived in. And when you would walk in, you'd have, they would obviously have to keep count and had to shake down people. A commissary, obviously you can get cigarettes and things like that. This was the cafeteria, bulletproof windows. Bulletproof glass. We ate here. Football team came in here. Well, actually it was a softball team, I think, that we came in. Yeah, it was a softball team. And one of the guys was murdered the week before we got there. He was a snitch, and the guard said this blood on the ground was still stained. He told me about it. This is the first time I met Larry Wright, and I asked him, I said, have you ever heard of Red Fuller?
When I knew Red, he lived in the minimum security Red building right here. And when Red was here, Red was the man. He was, I don't know if you call him a shot caller, but Red approved pretty much everything that went on. I've seen Red bench press close to 600 pounds.
Yep.
So that's pretty strong. And we had corporal punishment. And we used to whip them on whipping posts. That's the belt. Okay? And that whipping post was right out here on the yard. Lake Russell wanted to put a stop to the whipping post.
So Larry took us outside, and this was the start of the tour.
Okay, to give you a little bit of information about the prison, in the early 1890s, the state of Tennessee entered into a program to lease inmate labor to the coal companies. And what that accomplished was the Coal Creek War, because that put free world coal miners out of work. And the inmates were essentially working slave labor. They got paid $60 a year for working, and that's all. Now, all of the coal miners loaded all the inmates onto a train and sent them back to Nashville. Well, when that happened, then the state sent the militia in here. So they had the militia against the coal miners, started the Coal Creek War, which to me was essentially the same as the Hatfields and McCoys. So after a few little war battles and several people getting killed, the state of Tennessee said, look, that's enough. We'll mine coal for ourselves. So they built the prison here in 1896. This is not the original prison. The original prison was just a little bit further back. It was made out of wood, and it was made in an L shape. The front of the building came across, and then there was a wing that went back. Now part of that prison burned, and then they built this prison in 1936. This was all built by inmate labor, free materials. Because all these rocks that you see in the building, in the wall, in the gymnasium, in the gun tires, all of that came from on site. Back here at the base of the mountain is a quarry, a rock quarry. We got a crew of inmates that went back there. They quarried the rocks. They brought them down here, and the inmates laid the rocks. They brought people in that taught them how to cut these rocks to make them lay to where they would be flat. Okay. I saw some paperwork last year where all these buildings with this rock and stuff, now not the main building, but the ones where they use all this stone in the wall and these buildings and stuff, all of that was built for $46,000. You can't buy the rock for the front of that building for $46,000 now. Now, at one time when we had the coal mines going, and we dug coal from 1896 to 1967, we had 1,100 inmates and 500 beds. That don't add up. Now in a minute we'll get in here and we'll see these cells. In these cells, 4 men were assigned to each cell, but there's only 2 beds. Now you'd have 2 men in the bed, 2 men in the coal mines, 12-hour shifts. Now the movie told you 6 days a week. Can't. Had to be 7. Because on Sunday, where did we put the other 500? Okay? So that's a little bit of a mistake they made in the movie. There's one mine right here. It's about 75 yards up the bank. That's the only mine left on this property. The original property was 4,000 acres. Now it's only 104. The other 3,900 acres went to Frozen Head State Park. Now there are some trails with Frozen Head that you can walk and hike those trails, and it will take you to the upper mines. Now this mine here is number 4, 5, 6, and 7 is all the way to the top. 1967, number 7 mine collapsed and 2 inmates got killed. That put a stop to the coal mines. And over here on this hill, now there's 4 on this mountain, there's 3 on this mountain. Number 3 mine right up here collapsed in 1963. The bodies are still in there. Now, why they couldn't get them out, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty confident to say that it was a safety thing. We know that they knew how many and who went in and how many and who came out. But the bodies that are still in there, in 1972, when the prison shut down for a labor strike, we lost a lot of paperwork. That was part of the paperwork, is to tell us exactly how many and who, but we think that there's been at least 14 bodies still in there. Okay. On top of the wall, you'll see that there's razor wire here. Now the razor wire did go all the way around, the whole perimeter, the top of the wall, all the way around the institution. You'll see also that there's strands of barbed wire inside. That barbed wire, when we had inmates here and the prison was open, that barbed wire had 2,500 volts of electricity on it. It'll turn you a flip. Now where James Earl Ray and them made their escape, and I'll show you that, there was an 18-inch gap between the wall and the barbed wire, and they went under. That's how they got out, without hitting that barbed wire. Now what we did find out last year, they did hit that barbed wire when James is the one that stuck the ladder up there. The ladder was made out of water pipe, and he hit that hot wire. We didn't know that till last year. One of the inmates that escaped with him came back. And he said that when James hit that hot wire, said it turned him flip. We've had over 900 former inmates come back. We've had over 100,000 visitors. So we've been pretty busy the last year and a half. When he came to Brushy Mountain in 1969, if anybody wants to go in there and have somebody have a picture made, that's fine. We used to leave the cell doors open, and we started having problems with people using the bathroom. And we have no water up here, so we put a stop to that. Like I said, this was James's first cell. Now, he had other cells throughout the whole institution, but this was his first cell. Okay? In 1981, James got stabbed over here in the library. And when he got stabbed, 4 inmates stabbed him. They belong to the Occupation Society, which is a similar organization to like the Black Panthers. Black Panthers of the 70s and 80s. In my opinion, when they stabbed him, it was publicity, because none of his stab wounds were life-threatening. He had 22 stab wounds, 72 stitches, and a blood transfusion. The blood transfusion developed into hepatitis. Hepatitis turned into cirrhosis. Cirrhosis is what killed him in 1998. Now, James left here in 1992. People asked me if I knew James. Yes, I knew James. James was extremely quiet, a loner, had very few friends, or very few people that he associated with. Now, when James was here, if James talks to you, he's not going to say a whole lot. If a couple of us officers are standing around like we're just standing here talking, and James was to walk by, good chance he's not going to talk to you at all. Now, if you said, "Good morning, James, how you doing?" "I'm good, boss," and he keep walking, and that'd be it. Now, if I'm about down here by myself, and I walk by, and he's in the cell, he might say, "Good morning, boss," or "How you doing, boss?" And that's it. Now, this picture is a picture of me and James, Christmas Eve, 1989. He talked to me more this night than he ever talked to me the whole time he was here. And the conversation was, "James, can I get a picture made with you?" "Yeah, what are you going to do with it?" I said, "Nothing, it's for me." "You going to put it in a newspaper, a book, or a magazine?" And I said, "No, this picture is for me, and me only." He said, "Okay, I'll do it." And when I did that, this copy that you're looking at now and the original copy are the only 3 copies there are of it. Are the only 3 copies there are. I kept my word to him. That's one of the inmates that did it. That's Doc Walker. There was Doc Walker, John Partee, Jerome Ransom, Ron Newsom. is the 4 inmates that did it. That's, like I said, that's Doc Walker, that's John Partee. Okay.
He's still alive?
Huh?
The young's still alive?
This one's not. Walker's still alive. Well, in fact, I think all of them are still alive. And he's out on parole. And I think the others are too. But he had like 160 years when he came in. He came in October of '78.
Have any of those guys come back to visit?
Yeah, not these guys. But we've had over 900 inmates come back.
Oh, okay.
Now, the most recent one that I'm aware of, that I know, now we've had inmates, former inmates that come back this year. But they didn't come up and tell us who they were. But we recognized them. Now, Doug Shelton came back last year. Now, when James Earl Ray and them escaped in '77, there was only supposed to have been 3. Supposed to have been James, Earl Hill, and Doug. Well, James and Earl are dead, and Doug came back last year. And Doug's getting on up there. So, but yeah, we've had, like I said, over 900. Last year, some of y'all saw out here, maybe the sign that said where we had the whipping post. Okay. Last year, we had a 94-year-old black man come up here that had been whipped on that post in 1955. When he came here, he was doing life sentence for raping a white boy. They whipped him on the post because he refused to work in the coal mines. They finally convinced him to work in the coal mines. 6 months later, they found out he could cook. They put him to work in the dining room. 4 years later, the woman changed her story. So they turned him loose. And he came back last year. And when he came back and started telling us who he was and when he had been here, we set him down at the picnic tables and we picked his brain. We didn't want him to leave because we wanted as much information from him that we could get. And he gave us a load of information.
So he ended up being innocent.
Yep, and then he ended up being innocent. Now, here's a picture of him. And when the dog team caught him, the dog team hollered at the warden, which was Stony Lane. They hollered at the warden and they said, "Warden, can you meet me at the bottom of the mountain at that little white bridge?" Warden said, "I'll be over in a minute and I need to talk to you." That told us that they had him. Because the FBI and the CIA were monitoring our radio conversations. They bugged our phones. So we couldn't pass information along to everybody because of them interfering. We had to go about 10 miles up the road to a private citizen's house and use the phone to be able to relay messages back and forth to people because of the FBI and CIA. But now, when they caught him and they said, "Meet me at that white bridge at the bottom of the mountain," I'm assuming the FBI and the CIA went to looking at the map, trying to find that white bridge. That wasn't on the map. There was no such thing as a white bridge at the bottom of the mountain. That was just a code that the warden and the dog team had worked out that let the warden know we got him. First thing out of James's mouth when they caught him, "Can you get me back to the institution before the FBI gets hold of me?" He was afraid they were going to kill him. Questions?
What happened after he got back here? He go in the hole?
Well, he didn't go to that hole, he went to the lockup. He went to D block. At that time, D block was the lockup. Now, here's a picture of our cemetery. Now, if you'll notice in the cemetery, there are no headstones. There were headstones or markers until 70 to 72. for some reason, they disappeared about that time. Of course, in '72, the prison closed for labor strike. So I'm thinking, probably vandals, trying to get them a souvenir or whatever. They're in the process of remapping that. We've been told for years that there were 400 people buried down there. He's halfway done. He's at 418. And he's got half of it done. So far, he's found 5 mass graves. Now, I think, and rumor has it that University of Tennessee may be coming with a ground penetrating radar to help us figure out how many are in those mass graves. We've also been told that there are some single graves that may have 2 in it. But I know at one time we had our own coffin shop because we had so much death here. At one time we averaged 20 bodies a month going into the morgue, and we had our own morgue. We had our own coffin shop. But we also had a lot of disease, typhoid fever, malaria, hepatitis. 90% of the black inmates had syphilis, smallpox. That, along with being killed by other inmates, coal mine accidents, that type of thing. At one time, we were in the top 10 in violence nationwide. Prison. It's been a lot of death here. A lot of death. An inmate struggled and throwed him off over the steps. And that happened upstairs. We had one inmate here named Carl Hale. Carl was out of Saudi days in Cell Creek. Okay. Carl didn't have a whole lot of time when he came here, but he killed 5 since he's been here. And that's Carl. Carl's extremely dangerous.
He's still living today.
He's still living. And he's killed 5 since he's been here. He killed 1 upstairs here in the auditorium up there. Almost cut his head off. Almost cut his head off.
Is he still in jail?
He's in Morgan County. Now, the floor, is considered the rock. A rock man is a janitor. Carl's the best rock man I ever had. If you let him, he will work 48 hours a day. When it comes to, you get him up in the morning at 5 o'clock, tell him, Carl, eat your breakfast and I got something for you to do. Yes, sir, boss. And never have a minute's trouble out of it. But now, if an inmate wronged him, and Carl ever told him, I'm going to kill you, dude better look out, because Carl will kill him. It might not be today, it might not be 5 years from now, but the first opportunity Carl gets, he's going to kill him.
Did they, for him to kill him, did they have to make their own? Yeah,
they made their own knives. Made their own knives, they'd kill them any way they could. Knives, choke them to death.
Yeah, killing guards.
Huh?
They were killing guards.
Carl?
No, guards. Was any guards killed?
Oh, yeah. We had one officer that got killed in 2005. The inmate went out to court, and his wife met him over there for the court, to hear the court case. And when they come out of the courthouse and went to put the inmate into the van, she pulled up and shot him. And she killed one and shot the other guard. And they went on to escape, and they caught him in Ohio 2 days later. And the man she killed was Cotton Morgan. Cotton Morgan, they don't make them over there, Cotton Morgan. Hit about 170 at a time in here. 2 officers. Sometimes there's 1. We would sit at a table back here, and when we sat at the table, we had a soapy pan of water. The inmates would, once they got done eating, they turned the tray in the corner. Then they'd walk back here to the table and they'd have to present their spoon and their fork. Show it to us. Drop it in that soapy water. If for some reason he only had one, then we're going to take him out here, away from everybody else, and we're going to strip him naked. And we're going to find that other spoon or fork, whichever one he had. That's not to say that when he showed his spoon and fork here, that his buddy didn't give him an extra one up there to be able to take back here and make a knife or something out of it. But he better show two right here. If he showed two right here, I didn't have no reason to do anything back here to strip search it. So they knew that. So they would show that spoon and that fork. Just so that nothing else, they would be shut down. Now, for those of you that saw the movie, it talked about the gentleman up here that was real vicious with the meat cleaver. So they cut that one's arm off. That happened back there in that corner, where Brown said bars is. In the movie, when y'all get to watch the movie, it talks about a killing that was up here. And they used a meat cleaver and a big butcher knife on an inmate. And it was pretty vicious. A lot of blood. They cut one arm off. The other arm, it don't tell you the video, but the other arm was about halfway into it. And they chopped him up with a meat cleaver. And they chopped him up with that knife so much in the chest and everything that when they picked him up, he just fell apart. Now, why they killed him, I think he wouldn't pay for the drugs he bought. He had bought some drugs from them two guys, and he wouldn't pay them. We had a lot of drugs back here. That's what a lot of the killing was over. There was one incident out here on the yard, and we had a midget named Jack Jet, and they killed him. He went to the drug dealer over on the front porch of the gymnasium and bought one pill for $7. Back then, $7 for one pill was a pretty good pill. He took and swallowed the pill. And then he looked at the drug. Now here's where Jack got a case of the stupids, because he's already looking. He can't fight. And he's talking to a full-grown adult man, and he swallows the pill, and then tells him, chalk it. I'm not going to pay you. What are you going to do about it? And they stabbed him on the front porch of the gym, and he died right down there on the ground. Didn't even get to feel the effects of the pill. So he died for $7. Now, when they do the paranormal ghost tours and stuff, they pick him up. I led a group around one time, and I didn't tell the whole story. And I'll tell you that. I'll tell you the end of it here just in a second. But when I'm leading the group, and we walked by, and I said, yeah, and I said, he got stabbed right there on the porch, and I said, he died right here. We walk off. Two ladies in the group stopped. And I turned around, and I said, you got a question or something? Both of them, at the same time, said, I smell a cigar. Jack Jet was known for smoking a cigar. They smelled his cigar. Now, how many of you believe in ghosts? Once they all got in here, they segregated themselves. Okay? There's nobody in that office. Once an inmate right up here gets stabbed, And when he got stabbed, he knew that somebody was going to stab him. He just didn't know who, when, or where. And when he got stabbed, and the guy come up with a knife and cut him. When he got cut, his intestines were falling out. And he runs this way to trying to get upstairs. And this is Ronnie. That's the one he got his intestines cut out. Now, if you can see that, down on the bottom it shows Ronnie's number. Ronnie had a 54 number, meaning that Ronnie got locked up somewhere around 1960. 57 number out now. You got a life sentence for murder. But when he got cut that day, that was a mess too. That was a mess. Let's go to big law. Then you could count on what he told you as being the truth. And he would keep his word. Okay? This right here, this involved some inmates that we had 7 white inmates that lived down there, and we had a group of black inmates that lived on the next floor up. And it was a power struggle between those group of inmates. We didn't have Bloods and Crips, Vice Lords, Gangster Disciple, gangs like you got now. What we had then was just either all black or all white. And that's all we had. You had a group of about 7 or 8 white inmates, and all the white inmates followed them. You had a group of black inmates, and all the black inmates followed them. And that's all it was. Well, what the 2 groups was doing was trying to control anything illegal that went on back here. Drugs, gambling, commissary. Inmates would run a store, what they called a store. One inmate would buy up a lot of groceries and stuff like that from the commissary, and then he'd sell them. Okay, that was one of the things that they wanted to control. Also prostitution rings. And no, we didn't bring women in here. We had little young, innocent kids that came in that were forced into doing sexual favors. And that was to control them. The black inmates had a gun, but they didn't have it with them. It was hid in the movie projector upstairs. The white inmates had their gun with them, but the black inmates didn't know they had a gun. Black inmates thought that they knew that the white inmates were planning something, but they thought what they were going to do was get the keys from the officers, open the doors, and there'd be a big knife fight. Because they had their cell doors jammed, the locks were jammed, full of stuff, so the keys wouldn't go in. Had the doors tied shut, that type of thing. They didn't know about the guns. One inmate down here could purposely dislocate his shoulder, and he did that. 2 officers went down there to check on him to see what he was hollering about. While they're down there, and they had to go all the way to the end, while they're down there, 2 inmates up here had cut the bars, pulled the bars down, came out and took the guards hostage. One of the guards was elderly. He was on the verge of retirement, and they told him, we're not going to do anything to you. Just do what we asked you to do and you'll be fine. Well, one of the things that they done, the sinks, the hot water and cold water are a push button. You let go of the button, water stops. So they took 2 Coca-Colas in a can, put them in the bottom of the sink, cut a broom handle, wedged that broom handle in that cold water. Let that cold water run for about 2 hours on them 2 cold rings. Then when they took Sawyer and them hostage, they put Sawyer in there and they gave him some aspirins and those 2 cold rings. They didn't think the aspirins would prevent a stroke or a heart attack, but they knew that it would help you if you did have a heart attack. The cell door was open. They could have come out anytime they wanted to. But the inmates told them, we're not gonna hurt you. You stay where you're at. So they let their buddies out. They came out here and took the other 2 guards hostage. Then they went upstairs. Then they told them, go to the end of the wall, face the wall, don't turn around when we tell you to. We just got a little killing we need to do. And that's how they put it. Just got a little killing. So 2 inmates, or the 2 officers went down there and faced the wall. They started at cell 1, and they started shooting. And when they started shooting, the guy got down under the bunk, held a mattress in front of him. His name was Larry Simmerly. That's Larry Simmerly. Okay. They went down and they shot James Nichols and James Mitchell. They were in 2 cell and 4 cell. And it killed them. They reloaded, and when they reloaded, they went down and shot 3 more. This was Paul Hawkins. Now, Paul didn't look like this back then. Paul had long dreadlocks and all of that. They shot him. And then 2 or 3 months after they shot him, he was downstairs on that walk down there, and they dropped down on him, and they had a knife about that long, and they stabbed him and picked him up with that knife. Now that was Paul Hawkins. I don't think, no, I don't have any more. But they never did kill Paul. That man got 9 lives. He's out now. Now Tim was the man that pulled the trigger. Tim was facing the death penalty. His attorney was coming up here. She, I don't know if you say she caught the Stockholm Syndrome or what, but it was real similar to what happened to Patty Hearst. She fell in love with him. His court-appointed attorney, you remember that? Out of Knoxville. And she fell in love with him because he was facing the death penalty. He had to have a psychological exam. She set up an appointment at a psychologist in Oak Ridge. When he had his appointment, she met him over there. 2 rolls of duct tape, 2 guns. That's Tim. That's the trigger man. Now that's a current picture of him, or a recent picture of him. Back then, Tim had longer hair and a beard, and they stayed on the run, and they caught him in Florida. Now, Tim didn't get the death penalty. In fact, he had 2 voluntary manslaughters, about 7 or 8 kidnapping charges, aggravated assault charges, and all of that stuff. And they run it concurrent with what he was already doing, which was 65 years for armed robbery. So he got nothing. He got nothing out of it. Once he'd done enough time to be eligible for parole on that 65-year sentence, they let him out. And he's in Cookville. Got married, lives in Cookville now.
He married his attorney.
No, he didn't marry the attorney. She married another guy. She moved back to Florida. And then rumor has it now that she's back in Knoxville. Works as a paralegal for some attorney in Knoxville. But her name at that time was Mary Evans. Her daddy was the vice president of agriculture or something at UT. Pendergast or something like that, I think was his name. But her daddy had a little bit of influence in Knoxville.
Did y'all have special cells that y'all put people that was sentenced to the death penalty?
Do what now?
Was there certain places that y'all put people that was sentenced to death penalty?
If you went to court and you were convicted and you got the death penalty, you went to Nashville. Okay? Now, we had some death row inmates here. We didn't have death row, but we had some death row inmates. The death row inmates that we had were here because they didn't play well with other death row inmates. See, on death row, they get out of the cell. These guys here, even the guys right here, had more restrictions on them than death row. These guys got out 1 hour a day. Death row gets out for 3 or 4 hours a day, if not more. These guys only got out 1 hour a day. They got out for 1 hour a day to go outside on the yard. They got out 20 minutes 3 times a day to go eat, and 10 minutes a day to go shower. That's it. All the other times they locked up. The new max unit. Now, prior to this building, the one that was here was the morgue. This is where we averaged about 20 bodies a month going into the morgue. When you get over in the museum, you may see some pictures of the crematorium. Crematorium wasn't for the inmate. Crematorium was for the animals that died that worked in the coal mines. And it was up on the upper yard, about where that building's at now. But there were several buildings up there, but that's what the crematorium was for the inmates. Now, when the inmates were in here, we brought them out here into this right here to exercise. There was a fence that came across here and then one that went across up there on that end. We'd put 8 or 10 at a time in here to exercise. I called this out here Thunderdome because there was a lot of fights, a lot of stabbings, and a lot of killings right here. We had one where there was a weight bench up at the other end of the building. The inmates up there working out. There was a knife came out of one of these windows. When that knife came out, 2 inmates grabbed the knife, they ran up there and pitched it to a 3rd man. When they pitched it to the 3rd man, those 2 inmates held him down. And they stabbed him and killed him 14 times. The guy had been here about 10 days. He had came here from Memphis and from Nashville because Memphis couldn't handle him, so they sent him to Nashville. Nashville couldn't handle him, so they sent him to us. But when he got here, he started running the same games and scams on the inmates here that he was doing down there. He just happened to run it on the wrong bunch of guys here. When he started running it on these guys, then they killed him. And like I said, he'd only been here about a week or 10 days. So they showed right quick they wasn't gonna put up with none of his stuff. Now, that stabbing and that killing happened the same day that the attorney helped the inmate escape. That happened about 9 o'clock in the morning, and that happened in the afternoon after lunch. But they had us jumping through hoops, trying to get all the notifications, get all the reports, get the TBI in here, state troopers, local law, get the investigation going, and our own internal affairs people, trying to get all that going and get that took care of when that took place. So then we switched gears and went for that. Now, in 1989, when we took Max out of here, we moved our kitchen workers into here. Now the kitchen workers, up until that time, we didn't have a whole lot of luck keeping the kitchen fully staffed because a lot of them didn't want to work in the kitchen and they'd find jobs somewhere else. But once we put the inmate kitchen workers in here, they wanted to be in here. Even though these are smaller cells, they're a one-man cell. So they gave up a little bit of square footage and living space to be in a cell by themselves, and that was the only cell block that had air conditioning. So with a smaller cell, by yourself, and the air conditioner, we didn't have no more problems about keeping inmates in the kitchen. If you want to, we'll go in there and look at those cells, see how small they are. But they're about half of what these cells are. And then down in the old hole, those cells are about half of what these are. But if you want to go in there and look at those, go ahead. In here,
Yeah,
when it was max or kitchen.
well, in his kitchen, yeah.
When it was kitchen, all they had to do was, if they wanted to work in the kitchen, all they had to do was fill out a job request and turn it in. And if they had experience working in the kitchen, then they were pretty well a shoe-in.
Right.
But now, when this was the max unit, whatever you done on the street didn't put you in here. What put you in here when it was max was what you did here. So you could come in here with 3 or 4 murders from the street and still be out everywhere else.
Right.
But if you started acting up and cutting up in here, then that's what put you in here. Bring it out if you want.
Who's this now?
Mine's about ready to start. Okay, this is our softball field. It's now where we have our concerts and stuff. Now, when James and them made their escape in 1977, in that far right-hand corner, you'll see where the wall juts up right before it gets just on the other side of that chain link fence. That's where James Earl and them went over, was right there where that wall rises, is right there. Now 6 of them, like I said, there was only supposed to have been 3. Doug, being the last man over, his job was to have thrown the ladder back inside. Well, he couldn't throw it back in because there's 2 guys on the ladder trying to take advantage of the situation. So he just dropped down on the back side. 6 of them went this way, 1 man went this way. The one that went this way was the only black guy that went with him. Warden asked him a couple hours later when they caught him, said, "Son, what was you thinking?" He said, "Warden, if I knowed that'd been James Earl Ray as the gang leader on this thing," he said, "I wouldn't have went." So they caught him just a few hours later. Now the 6 of them went this way. James was gone 54 hours. He only got 6 miles. Doug Shelton, Doug was gone the longest of any of them, and he was gone 72 hours. One guy did make it to Oak Ridge, but they caught him going down the turnpike over. I think he had stolen a bicycle, and a city cop seen him and pulled him over on that bicycle and caught him. Now, James had $300 on him and a map. But in his map, every time James was brought up here or took out of here, it was in the middle of the night. He didn't know where he was at. He didn't know which way was north and south. So the map did him no good. He didn't have a clue where he was at.
How long after the escape was security, what's the time like?
Right then. What they done, they started a fight right down here. Got everybody's attention diverted to down here. Okay? The officer that was in that gun tower was asleep. The last man to go over on the back side of this building on the wall is a gun tower. The officer in that gun tower shot the last man going over.
He killed him.
No, it didn't kill him. Shot him twice, but they found him right up in the woods up there. So he shot the last man over. As soon as they shot him, then everything went on a lockdown. When they went on a lockdown, then they did an emergency count. And with that emergency count, instead of going around and just counting bodies, they went around and counted. You showed me your ID card with your name and your picture. And that's how they figured out as to who and how many were gone. So security was notified actually immediately while it was still in the process of happening, but it took them about 30 to 45 minutes to figure out exactly who and how many. based on the count, when the count come back. And that's how it does with any escape. Everything will go on lockdown, and then once they go on lockdown, then that's when they go to counting faces. And then that way they can verify who's gone. Then once they verify who's gone, they will go to that man's cell, and they will get some of his belongings and let the dog smell it. And that's how the dog followed him. He had painted it black. He took that cover off, painted inside the cover black, painted everything inside that black. So when you look through the cover vent, you didn't see nothing. And I told him, that morning, I said, George, I know you're doing it, I'm gonna bust you. He said, bet you don't. I said, I bet I do. So I went in there and I sat and I shook that cell down for 2 hours trying to find it. And I just finally just sat down on the bed. Where would I put it? And I happened to notice one bolt on the cover of that heater that had no paint. It was slick. And I just leaned over and turned it. And that bolt just kept coming out and that cover laying down there it was. He come in that evening from work, he said, where'd you have you look today? I said, I got you, pack your stuff. No, you don't. I just pulled the desk drawer out and there it was.
Now you're in the gift shop at Brushy Mountain State Prison. Who says that crime doesn't pay? Well, at least the shops do. They have some cool stuff there. And obviously right here is the Tennessee Moonshine, end of the line, the distillery. It's a pretty cool place to have different flavors and things like that. You can see it down the whole wall of 2 sides that you can get tastings and things like that. $5 for 5 tastings, something like. They have different kinds of flavors like apple pie, blackberry, orange, peach cobbler. One thing that's pretty cool is they do have a great restaurant called the Warden's Table. Well, there you go. That's episode 5, Touring Brushy. Next week on episode 6, on Seeing Red, we're going to end up finishing Red's interview. And I hope you'll enjoy that as well. It'll be on 8 Ball Corner Pocket with Double J.